All right. Good evening, everybody. I would like to call this Civilian Oversight Commission meeting what is March 9th to order. And our first item on the agenda is public open time. And speakers will have 2 minutes.
Good evening, commissioners. My name is Jason Saris, and I just wanted to let the commissioners know that tomorrow night is the Truth Act Forum for the Sheriff's Department. This is an opportunity for the public to weigh in on what the sheriff does and how they operate. And I think if you have the opportunity to attend this forum, it would give you a great insight of what the public is feeling about the sheriff's office. So it could be either attended in person here, or I think you can watch it online as well. Also, how much time do I have left? I don't see the timer. I noticed like there's been some correspondence coming in, and the person facilitating the correspondence is replying to the correspondence. And I just wanted to know, I know it might be different with the inspector general, but I wanted to see if the commission could weigh in on some of those responses as well, because it kind of seems boilerplate right now. Maybe that's because you don't have a complete process in place, but food for thought. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Do we have anybody on Zoom?
Well, first we'll keep going on in the room.
Do we have anybody else from the audience?
We have one user on Zoom.
Okay.
iPhone SE, please go ahead and speak when you're ready.
Thanks. I just wanted to remind you that when you do go to the Truth Act Forum, you should be aware of how much of these efforts toward reform are really designed to be performative. And I think one of the things that no one on the former working group that precipitated this group or any members of this group have really grappled with is Alec Karakatsanis' criticism of these kind of middling reforms, which are really designed to distract the public from what needs to happen, which is a kind of, winding down of the year after year, decades of yearly increases to law enforcement, which is sucking money out of social services, schools, et cetera. And those areas are suffering, and then you're ending up with situations where you have over policing, and you get to blame it on, these underfunded social service programs. There's a little bit of a corollary right now. We're seeing, the billions of dollars we've spent blowing up Gaza and now blowing up Iran with, what looks like permanent environmental damage to Iran from the most recent bombing. And if you had, with a fraction of that money, you could have solved homelessness in the entire state of California. So we see like two things working in parallel, where you see huge amounts of money going to the military, huge amounts of money going to the police becoming more militarized, the military becoming something, on a whole other level. And no one's really addressing the fundamental issue, which is how do we wind this down?
Thank you for your comment.
We have one more user, Zoom user. Go ahead and unmute and you can speak.
Thank you. This is Philip Starhill. I'm calling in from Terra Linda. I had been in communication with Supervisor Sackett a little bit about the use of flock cameras by the sheriff, and that seems to be sort of ongoing. But one thing that I wanted to note is that the policies, according to the flock transparency page, have dramatically improved since they were well, since I checked late last calendar year, that the retention period has been dropped down to 30 days, which is in line with what the SRPD does. And also the list of other agencies that are given access to Marin County data is much smaller and focuses on nearby local police departments and CHP, which seems much more fit to purpose. The main place where I see there's a lot of room to go is around real transparency and accountability. That the alignment between the policies, which on paper are, I believe, very sound, and strike a very good balance between public safety and recovering victims of kidnapping and such, versus the potential for extreme misuse, Fourth Amendment violations, and such that FLOC can enable. But it's extremely unclear how those policies line up with practice. That there are a lot of pretty gaping holes in terms of what a bad actor could do and get away with, and we could be complicit in some extremely devastating actions carried out by either a member of our own law enforcement community or another law enforcement community that managed to get inappropriate access. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Your comment. Do we have anybody else on Zoom?
No more on Zoom.
All right. Well, thank you to everybody who shared during public comment. We will now move on to the next agenda item, which is the consideration of the draft meeting minutes from the February 9, 2026 meeting. There is no staff report, but staff is available if there's any questions from the commissioners on this item. And I will start on my right, Commissioner Chan.
No questions, thanks.
Commissioner Echeverria,
Very good. No questions.
Commissioner Gaston,
No questions.
Commissioner Lee,
No questions.
and Commissioner Miller.
No questions.
I will now open this to the public. If anybody has any comments on this agenda item, the draft meeting minutes from the February 9th meeting, the floor is now yours. And I see nobody in the audience. Is there anyone on Zoom?
We have one speaker on Zoom. iPhone SE, go ahead and unmute.
Thanks. I'm looking at the minutes and it is really confusing to me why you would announce public open time and take the time to mark that 6 members of the public address the commission and not mention who any of these people were. And obviously, if people don't want to identify themselves, then they wouldn't be identified. But I think it is important to denote who is speaking, because one of the issues that has repeatedly come up is that people are intimidated from coming to speak. And so if you're not even taking into account who the names are, for example, you normally have a bunch of people come in from the old working group, in part to kind of to make it seem like there's some sort of transition from the old group to the new group, but also to kind of add heft to this process, because otherwise, most people don't trust oversight bodies, to be honest, in large part because the people who are the most vulnerable to abuse by law enforcement do not get to pick the people who will be on oversight. So automatically you have, a lack of representation and a reinforcement of the existing power structure in the county. So by, not even bothering, I don't know who writes the minutes, but not even bothering to try to record the names, you're automatically establishing that you aren't really interested in investigating what the structural problems are that would preclude like immigrants from speaking, because you're not even denoting who the people are who are speaking. So you're not even taking into weighing that into the minutes. Someone's going to have to actually, take the time to watch the entire meeting to assess that. And on top of that, that's if they're, if they're even able to locate.
Are there any more?
There's no more.
Okay, well, I will close public comment time and I will move on to the commission discussion of this item. Are there any commissioners that have anything to say? Commissioner Chan?
No, thank you.
Commissioner Echeverria?
With respect to the draft, I just want to, sorry. I'm not used to people telling me that I can't speak.
You're doing
I'm not used to people telling me that I'm not speaking loud enough, so sorry about that. I think everything it's a draft. So I want to just kind of make that clear, but I will ask something. This is more of a question. So in terms of doing the kind of outreach that we're talking about, and my understanding is that this is going to be part of what we're going to be working on, but is there any thought about how all of that is, like, how we're going to implement that? Because it seems pretty ambitious.
Commissioner, are you speaking about the community outreach and engagement plan that we're going to be discussing tonight?
Correct.
Okay. Would it be okay if we save that question for when we get to that item?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Gaston?
No comments.
Commissioner Lee?
Yeah, minutes looks fine.
Commissioner Levin?
Nope.
I think the only comment that I have to say is I appreciate that there's a little more depth in the ad hoc subcommittee report outs. I think that's something we talked about, so I appreciate seeing that. But if there is no other discussion about this, do I have a motion to accept the meeting minutes from February 9th?
So moved.
Second.
So I have a motion from Commissioner Chan and a second from Commissioner Robinette. And I will ask Lynn for the roll call.
Sorry,
Approved.
Commissioner Chan, one more time.
Approved.
Commissioner Echeverria,
Approved.
Vice Chair McAvoy,
Approved.
Commissioner Gaston,
Approved.
Commissioner Lee,
Approved.
Commissioner Oldham Robinette. Approved. Motion carries.
All right, we will move on to agenda item number 4, announcements and ad hoc subcommittee reports. I'll invite the commissioners and the subcommittee representatives to provide their update in turn. After each update, we will ask for commissioners' questions, but questions only. We'll leave discussion after we have public open time for this. Item A is an update from correspondence regarding flock safety automated license plate readers. And the update or the announcement for this is that Chair Frommer and Commissioner Gaston have both received correspondence from community members regarding concerns with county use of flock safety automated license plate readers. We want to note that we have received this correspondence and that the chair and I will consider placing this on a future agenda for an upcoming meeting. And then item B is the update on the letter of invitation that we sent to the sheriff. For this, as you probably recall from our February meeting, the commissioners approved the language of a formal invitation to the sheriff to present on the sheriff's civilian complaint process and authorized Chair Frommer to submit the invitation on our behalf. Once the sheriff received the invitation, he and Chair Frommer spoke. He appreciated the invitation and shared that he plans to participate in the Civilian Oversight Commission meetings once the Inspector General has been appointed. So that is that update, and now we will move on to an
Vice
update.
Chair, if I could just say there's supposed to be questions after.
is right.
So you could take questions on A and B now. Thank you so much. You're doing great.
Okay, so do we have any questions about either of those two items?
From the commission.
Yeah, questions.
Questions. I just actually want to reiterate the feedback that Dr. Frommer and I discussed, because we both have received some information questioning about the flock safety information, the license plate. So we actually do need to research it more and talk to Sheriff Scardina about the process, because at the time, we felt like this is was a good system, but we need to understand all the details, what it provides. And for instance, I do know that there was an incident that happened in Marin City. I would say about 7 months ago, there was a shooting in the early mornings, and because the cameras were there, the sheriff's department was able to at least identify what happened during that time with the license plate readers. However, we do need to uncover what else is happening with the flock system, what information is being given to any other department besides the sheriff's department. And so this is going to take some conversation and meetings with the sheriffs and Dr. Fulmer and I to come back and make some recommendations to this commission.
Thank you, Commissioner Gaston. We're going to do questions and then save the discussion
Okay.
for after, but thank you for that. Do any of the other commissioners have any questions on the flock safety cameras or the letter of the invitation to the sheriff? Okay, so then we will move on to an update on the Inspector General and.
Right.
Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair. So the update on the Inspector General hiring is that the preferred candidate is currently going through background check, and the background check usually takes anywhere from 6 to 8 weeks. And so I think they started a week or two ago. So that's our time frame right now. And that's my update. I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you for your update. Are there any questions regarding this item?
Did they accept the offer, or is that background check done before they accept the offer?
I'm not 100% sure.
County policy is to save the background check for the last step of the process.
Any other questions on this item?
Just to clarify, so that means he has not been he or she has not been offered the position yet, pending the background check.
I'm not sure about that.
Oh.
It's the last step for the county to make its decision. So it may have been discussed. I don't know. But what I do know is when the county picks a candidate, they do not start a background check until they've decided that's the candidate that they want to hire.
Okay, great. And then just a follow-up, if I may, just to Lynn, and I don't know if you know the answer to this, Lynn, but just because this process is so long, is there a backup candidate if if the background check doesn't come through? How does that?
There was a robust pool of candidates, and so there could be potentially. Thank you.
Questions? Okay, now we will move on to an update from the Monitoring and Compliance Ad Hoc Subcommittee. And I believe Commissioner Lee is going to give this update.
Sure. Okay. So this is the Monitoring and Compliance Subcommittee. We met on February 17th for the first time. If you recall, we are reviewing our work plan to kind of study the ordinance and the language identified in SCAP as our initial focus area, the SCAP program. We discussed the county executive's recent announcement. It was like just maybe 48 hours before the meeting, if I recall, that there was announced at the county executive was removing SCAP funding from the budget starting fiscal 26 to 28. So here we were to sit down and decide whether this is something we want to recommend or not. And it's been removed from the future fiscal years. So we all agreed as a committee that regardless of this proposed budget change, we wanted to still research and understand the program better. We discussed the importance as a committee of having a balanced, well-informed perspective. And in particular, we wanted to have a thorough examination of the current sheriff and county policies, and also learn from other counties what their experiences have been with SCAP, because a number of counties were participating in the program and have dropped out. And we just kind of wanted to understand what was going on around us. So we scheduled a follow-up meeting for February 23rd. We asked staff to invite the sheriff, have an office representative come so they could answer our questions. We also, Vice Chair McAvoy offered to present her research that she had conducted, and staff also committed to providing some background materials for us. So then in between the meetings, staff invited the sheriff. The sheriff respectfully informed the staff that while they appreciated the invitation, they noted that sort of as a matter of practices at this point, they want to wait until the Inspector General is hired before they participate in COC activities. So they declined, but disappointing, but also understood that that's kind of what they're doing at this point, but that's fine. So we get together on February 23rd. Vice Chair McAvoy presented to the staff, presented to the commission, and kind of the background work that she'd been doing on SCAP. And then we discussed whether we yet have enough information to make a recommendation, and we honestly just don't at this time. I think it's important that we talk to the sheriff and understand the operations and what they've been doing. We expressed appreciation for the county executive's proposed exclusion of SCAP for funding fiscal 26 through 28. We requested the staff submit questions to the sheriff. Importantly, we still want to understand whether SCAP applications will be submitted in fiscal year 25 through 26. Because remember, this is the budget beginning 26 through 28 that they excluded it. So it's unclear whether SCAP funding is going to be applied for in fiscal 25 and 6. At this point, we agreed to place our SCAP work on hiatus until the IG is appointed because we're sort of in a vacuum of information until then. And we're going to reconvene at that time to continue research. Any questions? Or do I not ask? Sorry.
Good. Are there any questions on this update from the Monitoring and Compliance Subcommittee? No questions? Okay, we will move on to the Community Outreach and Engagement Ad Hoc Subcommittee, and Commissioner Gaston will be doing the update for that.
Okay, hello. Here I would like to discuss that we had several great meetings on February 12th and the 26th, and the committee members are Lynn, Dr. Gina Frommer, Solange, myself, and Lynn, and also the two staff persons who have been identified from the Chief Executive Office, Gary Besser and
Ben Tingle.
yeah. But what I really like to say is that they took a lot of the information that we have been discussing in our outreach committee, and I really feel that they have done a great job in the presentation. As you can see in your community outreach and engagement plan, it was very thorough. I'm really pleased with how they really thoughtfully heard everything that we discussed. I'm really, again, pleased with how everything is laid out, how we want to proceed with community outreach. And then I kind of pushed fast forward on this. So let me go back a little. We did review and approve the recommendation of our informal name, the Civilian Oversight Commission of the Sheriff's Office, to be placed in our commission bylaws. Then I can move forward with the community outreach engagement plan. And it is very thorough. It will address all the issues that we have been discussing, like how do we go out in the community? How do we identified all the different districts. We even have a sheet on, how we present ourselves to the public, how we're going to deal with social media engagement, how we're going to be having meetings, listening sessions. It's really, really thorough, and I'm really pleased that they did consider all the things that we discussed. We talked about having a newsletter that would go out. We identified different community organizations in Marin County. We identified the different events that happen in Marin, how we're able to present ourselves when we do go out in the public about who we are. We even drafted a letter that would go out to each of our constituencies in introducing ourselves to our neighbors, letting them know who we are and what we do. And it's really, I'm pleased with what we put together.
Thank you for that update. Are there any questions on this item?
I think I'll just table my question for later.
All right, no more questions? we will move on to the bylaws and code of conduct ad hoc subcommittee, and I believe Commissioner Chan, are you?
Sure, happy to do that. The subcommittee met on February 24th and reviewed the suggestions and feedback received from the public and from other commissioner members from our last full commission meeting. Such feedback and suggestions related to specific areas of the draft bylaws relating to, for example, terms, removal procedures, public comment guidelines, meeting frequency, and agenda setting processes. As well as a general comment to include more of the substantive authority of the commission in the language of the bylaws. So during our February 24th meeting, we discussed those. We reviewed language to address some of these concerns. We are still very much working on that, and we'll need at least one other additional subcommittee meeting in order to perhaps get to a place where we can present a revised draft to the public and to the full commission.
Thank you for that update. Are there any questions from the commissioners on that item? No? Okay, so now we will move to public comment on all of these items, and because there was quite a lot of content, I'm going to give 3 minutes for public comment time.
3 minutes, you got it.
Thank you so much.
Hi, Jason here. I just want to talk about the flock system. Glad that the flock system is being introduced to a possible future agenda item. I was confused with it being labeled as a correspondence on the agenda. I couldn't find the correspondence anywhere, and so I didn't know what we were going to talk about when it came to the flock system. But so maybe it could be posed in a little better way on the agenda. I'm also concerned that it might be tough to get more answers from the sheriff when he is refusing to come to a commission meeting before the IG is hired. The public wants to know what he has to say. Transparency is key. That was a great report on the SCAP program. Glad that the commission is still willing to learn more about the SCAP. But again, the sheriff won't meet with the commission and has also barred his staff from meeting with the commission. To me, this is unacceptable and tells me that the sheriff is being evasive and really doesn't want to work with the commission until he absolutely has to. I hope for better collaboration between the sheriff's office and the commission, but so far it's a rough start. And I think that's all I got for now. Thanks.
Thank you for your comment. Is there anybody else from the audience?
Marin City, California, an extremely over-policed community. And we have decades and decades of data to prove that. Can't be debated. Many communities that have been far less policed are getting rid of their flock cameras. Flock cameras, what's happening, many knew what happened. Many assumed what happened. And it's happening. Data is being breached or taken or stolen, call it what you will. These communities who are giving a flock are not giving, as you did, they're not giving one incident and support to keep it. So I don't know why, I guess that's your choice, but they're not giving an incident and saying, oh, this is why we should, when data is supposed to be kept in privacy, but it's not. Marin City, California, I repeat, an extremely over-policed community with possibly even now people in the community's data, personal information being breached. When this came about in Marin City, many people didn't show up to the Board of Supervisors because people assumed it would just pass. But in the community, well, it would pass. In the community, the many dozens of people that I've talked to online and in person were not for this, or against it for this exact reason. So when you say we're going to discuss and get more information, the information is already out there. I don't know what more information we need. I mean, the information is already out there. People's information is being taken, it's being siphoned, breached, call it what you want. So, but this is typical Marin County. Typical Marin County. So conservative. You vote one way. Sorry, my phone's ringing. So conservative. You won't have much pushback, a little bit of pushback, and you expect this to go away. Marin City, California, an extremely over-policed community, more so than any community in California, and worse than many communities in the Deep South. And we have that data. The Deep South is supposed to be so bad. Marin City is over-policed much more than those communities. But here in nice Marin County, be nice, be polite, and accept the beating, accept the abuse. The cameras need to go out of Marin. They need to get out of Marin City. Why did you even advocate for them to come to Marin City? You know the history. So that's shocking, but it's not shocking.
Thank you for your comment. Are there any more comments in the audience? Are there comments on Zoom?
There's one comment on Zoom. iPhone NC, go ahead and unmute.
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
You can, and I'll start your
Yeah.
time. Ready.
Thanks. I just wanted to point out that it's I think the way the discussion is going with, whether the sheriff will show or not, is a little bit of a distraction. This isn't really a bug that the sheriff doesn't have to show up to talk to you guys. It's a feature, and this is how this commission was designed. It's the same thing with the working group. It was designed for really just being accommodating to the status quo, and that's why you ended up with such a weak package set of proposals from the old working group. And it just, the fact that this whole hiring process for the inspector general is so drawn out. I mean, I remember advocating for civilian oversight back in 2020 at the Board of Supervisors, and here it is 2026, and everything it is designed to fail. So I think it's just, people need to be a little bit realistic, and obviously, people want to promote this because they have their own aspirations within the county, but it is what it is. Secondly, the flock is a serious concern. I want to remind you that no one ever brings up the concerns about Cellbrite, which is Israeli surveillance that all of our law enforcement uses. And The Guardian just last January reported that in Jordan, the police were using Cellbrite technology to hack directly into the phones of activists. So while we're concerned about flock and the license plate, when you look at some of the people, some of the well-placed, people in the county who are asking us to be concerned about flock and only flock, you do have to wonder if they're not trying to distract you from a lot of the Israeli spyware that law enforcement already has, that is so much deeper and more penetrating than something like driver's plates, license plates. This is a very pernicious problem, and it doesn't even make it onto the radar of the agenda. I've never heard a single commissioner talk about Cellbrite or Pegasus or any of these other spyware programs from Israel. I don't know if it's just too impolitic to bring it up, but these are, these systems were, what we can what we can glean is that they were most likely used in the killing of Matthew Preddy and Renee Good. And who knows, what other people have been targeted.
Thank you for your comment. Are there any other members of the audience or on Zoom?
None.
All right, I will close. Thank you all for your comments. I will close public comment time now, and we will move on to the commission discussion of these items. Commissioner Gaston?
Yeah, so there was a comment from the public about the agenda regarding correspondence. So we actually don't have any correspondence on the flock system, so we could discuss it more and also to see what other cities in Marin County and also throughout the state of California is doing. I feel we need to have some more detailed information.
I just wanted to note that that Mr. Saris was correct. There was an oversight in the packet, and I'll make sure it's up to date by tomorrow morning with the correspondence that was received. Thank you.
Will it be detailed about what happens and how information is gathered and what happens to it? And what other cities are doing? I mean, I've been reading about what other cities are doing, like Mill Valley, and I'm talking about our local, but something for us to.
It's about the correspondence that the commissioners received about it.
I believe Vice Chair McAvoy said that the idea is to bring that all that work and the information to an upcoming future commission meeting, but we didn't have it for tonight. It was just an announcement tonight.
Will it be on the next one?
That's something we're going to consider for our next agenda setting meeting for our next meeting.
Right.
Are there any other discussion points from any of the other commissioners?
I have it's more of a point, I don't know, it's more of a comment. But with respect to the SCAP funding, I would also like us to take a look at any other funding that the sheriffs might be receiving from, say, that has maybe not SCAP funding, but maybe other funding that they're receiving from, say, ICE. Because I would also like to see what that relationship really looks like. Really like some clarity on there.
Do you mean in terms of like receiving funding?
In terms of receiving funding reimbursements, yes, correct.
And sending data to, okay.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, I think if I can respond, I think staff had sent some of our questions to the sheriff, and within that, we asked about any data that's going to be reported after 26, 27. It's just our information's right now, it's just pretty limited since they're not meeting with us. So
yeah,
it's anything that's on public record that we can find, but I think that's good input for when we do have live discussions.
And I just want to be clear, we're not absolving the ad hoc subcommittee on SCAP. We can only do so much with so much information. Is there any other discussion for any of these items? All right, well, thank you. I will close this item and move on to item number 5 on the agenda, which is the consideration of a draft community outreach and engagement plan. I'll invite staff to present their report.
All right, thank you very much. If I could please have the slide deck up. I just want to thank Commissioner Gaston for all of your words about the community outreach and engagement program. This was a great introduction. You almost did my staff report for me, so thank you. Next slide, please. So before we start, I just wanted to ground the work that the commission is doing in the commission's work plan. You've seen this slide before. This is part of phase 1, your foundational priorities, which was intended to lay down some of the important substantial items that are in the ordinance that would give your commission structure and give you some opportunity to work together before the Inspector General is appointed, so that you might be able to have some time to really think about what it is that you're interested in regards to bylaws and community outreach and engagement and training curriculum. So I just wanted to kind of ground where we are with this. And next slide, please. So the item before you is to consider the draft community outreach and engagement plan. Next slide. And this isn't an item that the commission will vote on tonight. It is more just for you to review it and to give feedback. And then that feedback will go back to the subcommittee for further review and refinement. And then it would go to the IG for review as well. But before we get into all of that, I want to just note that it was Commissioners Oldham Robinette, Fromer, Echeverria, and Gaston that were on this subcommittee. And they met 6 times and had a lot of very good, substantial discussions about what it would look like to do really important work out there in the community regarding public outreach and engagement. Next slide. Oh, sorry, you already got it. This is the policy framework. The ordinance does say that the Inspector General is responsible for community outreach and engagement with the collaboration with the Commission. So the Commission is a really important partner in the collaboration with the Inspector General to conduct the community engagement and outreach. There's some other items that are in the Inspector General's column in terms of their responsibilities as it's laid out in the ordinance, and also the Commission's role. One thing that I think is interesting to point out is the production of an annual public report, which would be done jointly between the Inspector General and the Commission. And then, of course, since this is about community outreach and engagement, the community plays a role as well to participate, to provide input and feedback, and to really play a big role in the work that's going to be done. Next slide. So, like I said, Commissioner Gaston did a great job of going through the main parts, and I won't go through them in depth, similar to how when we talked about the bylaws. I'd really rather, when we get to the discussion and question, have the things that you're interested in talking about come up. But I'll just go over very briefly the bones of the document. And I do want to acknowledge Ben Tingle. He was a consultant that worked with us, and we just want to really thank him for putting together this first draft based on all of the comments and ideas of the commissioners. So the first section is the purpose and authority section, which establishes the foundation under the ordinance. The next section is the outreach and engagement strategies, which really gives a countywide equity-centered engagement strategies. And it also points out the geographical alignment, I think, which is really important. Our county is not a monolith, and there's a lot of different parts of our county, different lived experiences, different languages spoken, different occupations all around. And so it was really important to really think about that diversity in the outreach plan. The next section is more of the like boots on the ground tactics of the plan. And the idea here is not that the commission or the Inspector General would do all of these, but it's like, this is the catalog. So if you have something that you would like to engage in, like let's say a community survey, you could look at the catalog of options and pick which ones you think would be most effective for the type of engagement that you're choosing to do. So that's that next section is the catalog. And then there's some transparency and accountability sections, which is why I mentioned at the top about doing that annual report to really make sure that the commission is reporting back to the community the work that they're doing and the impact that it's having. And then there's a number of appendices. We have some like print types, like a flyer. We have lists of community organizations and events that the commissioners and the IG might attend to promote information about the commission and the complaint process. We have the commission's e-newsletter, which hopefully everyone is subscribed to. We have 242 subscribers, and we have, I think, like a 60% open rate, which is pretty good in people's busy lives that they want to check out what's going on here at the commission. So definitely would love to get those numbers up, though. We also have what's something we've talked about a lot when we were in the subcommittee meetings is how we can leverage other people's newsletters to put blurbs about the commission in. And so I included Supervisor or President Eric Lucan's newsletter where he highlighted the commission when it first launched. And then I thought it was important to note that there has been news. So making sure that there's a good relationship with the news media, making sure that they're aware of the work the commission's doing. and the letter of introduction, and potentially some type sort of outreach about the commissioners themselves and a little bit about their background. So those are some of the things that are in the appendix. Obviously, couldn't get to everything that's listed in the plan, but I just wanted to have a little bit of an information about it. And next slide. Oh, there's some of the appendices. And next slide. So again, like I said, this is not an item to be voted on tonight, just for a review and feedback and discussion. And after this evening, the items will go back to the subcommittee for further refinement, and then collaboration with the incoming Inspector General to further refine and finalize the plan. And that is my report, and I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you for your report on that. Are there any commissioners that have any questions on this item? No questions? I think I'll save mine for the discussion part. So we will move to public comment. Are there any members from the audience that would like to provide comment on this?
Just to confirm, we're doing 2 minutes for this.
Yes, we're back to 2 minutes.
Thank you.
Some ideas that I've been on committees and commissions and boards. And so, an idea that has been floated around is, when you see a mayor say, meet me for coffee at the coffee house on Saturday or whatever day, or it could be at a community center, it could be wherever. And, there's 9 people on the board. So three of you can engage with the public at a coffee shop, rotate it out, 3, 3, and 3. Something like that. But, I think you're safe if you talk about, stuff that's already public record and, take recommendations or hear what people have to say, as long as you're not talking about, any collusion or anything. I think you should be fine there, but it would be a good way to get out into the public, get down, talk to people, to give you a good opportunity again to find out what people really want, because some people aren't showing up here, and I know it's just started, but we'd love to see some more public here. I just think that to help build that public trust is to get out there in the public and speak with people. Thanks.
Thank you for your comment. Is there anybody else from the audience that would like to provide comment on this? Are there any members on Zoom?
There was one. iPhone SE, did you want to speak? Noticed you put your hand down.
No, thank you.
Okay, no other on Zoom.
All right, I will close public comment on this item and now open it up for discussion amongst the commissioners.
I also felt that the draft was excellent and very comprehensive, and I was very impressed with the breadth of options recommended and the thought given into each individual option as well. And no notes.
Commissioner Iship. Commissioner.
It's a lifelong problem learning how to pronounce my name, so don't worry about it. We worked really, really hard on this, and I know that I mentioned in the beginning that it's ambitious, and that's because the reason why it's ambitious is because we really do want to get the feedback from the community. I really do like the idea of having the coffee clutches. I think that's a wonderful idea, actually. But yeah, we're trying to be expansive. We really are trying to reach out to the community, and we're working on it. We have a road ahead of us, and we know that. That's what I'm trying to say. We have a road ahead of us, and we really respect and honor everything that you're bringing to us today. And what I really like about it was the way that all the research was done with respect to all the different community-based organizations, the festivities here in Marin. We really tried to throw that blanket really wide.
Thank you, Commissioner Gaston.
Yeah, and I'd like to say that we are taking the audience feedback into consideration, and that's why we brought this back to our outreach commission ad hoc commission. And so this is a result of that. And so now we just have to start implementing it after it gets approved.
Commissioner.
Yeah, I also think this is really excellent and very comprehensive. I particularly like that there's a lot of focus on getting the youth involved, which I think is really important. I think that's a kind of a group of the society that sort of gets ignored, and it's really one of the more important stakeholders in all this, because we're trying to establish trust, start with all the problems, but then also from the ground up build it, and hopefully we'll have in a couple of years things will be a lot smoother. So yeah, I thought this was excellent. I would also just encourage the public, if you have comments or suggestions or ideas, now's the time to bring them forward, because the group's going to be looking at refining and adding to things.
Commissioner Robinette.
Yeah, I want to say thank you, Jason, for that suggestion too. And the gentleman from Marin City who suggested the banners on the outfield. I mean, everything that you all can think of that would help get the word out, we appreciate. And we try to recognize the different communities. Marin City is a very contained community. West Marin is like forever. And those are two areas that do not have their own separate police other than the sheriff. So I'm trying to recognize how to reach out to different communities within Marin. So.
Thank you for that. This is a very thorough, and I very much appreciate it. And I appreciate all the hard work that all of the commissioners have done on this. I do, in the district specific engagement area, there's no page number, but for District 2, I would include outreach at College of Marin. I think that would be very useful, and there's also a sheriff's substation there too, so I think that fits right in. And then for District 5, I would include outreach on, my bad, it says Binford Road right there. I think that's very key. I think that's very important. What I don't see on here, and maybe I've missed it somewhere, is doing some specific outreach to people that are actually incarcerated in the jail or family members of those who are incarcerated in the jail. I think it'd be super important to put a flyer in the lobby or, in the hall, in front of the elevator, in the lobby throughout. I think that's a unique group of people that are directly impacted on a day-to-day basis by the sheriff's office. But other than that, this is a very beautiful and thorough plan that you have. Are there any other comments? Right. The recommendation is just for us to review it, provide feedback. No vote is needed, and if there's no more discussion on this, I will close.
Just a question about process. So will more refining to occur, and then we basically wait until the IG is on board before we adopt it? Is that?
Yeah, that's the idea. But as you know, we are doing outreach, right? There's the newsletters going out. We have a webpage. So, the outreach will continue.
Okay.
The idea is that since
It'll be cleaned up.
the Inspector General,
He or she comes on board. We have.
so just a few months away.
So actually, just to follow up with that, do we have like something like, hey, there's the Civilian Oversight Commission that we could put up in the jail right now? Or is that something we'd have to wait on because that's sheriff territory?
I don't know. We could definitely design something. I mean, we do have the flyer with the QR code.
Yeah.
That I developed that way early on for a supervisor that was going into a community and just wanted something. So I just threw that together. But we could do some version of that. And so people could learn more about the commission and at least visit the website and sign up for the newsletter.
Does something like that exist in Spanish as well?
We could definitely get it translated.
And I don't know what other languages would be necessary, but I would assume that there might be other languages too.
Together.
Yep.
So
Can be done.
Also, could this be prepared for the county's like social media page, and then we can share it?
Yes, a social media campaign is identified in here. social media campaigns usually take a little bit of time to really think out exactly, which platforms and who will be doing it and all those pieces. So I would just recommend a little bit more fleshing out of that plan. We know that tweeting without a plan sometimes can go sideways. So just want to make sure that there's a thoughtful plan that's been developed in order to do that. But that is something that we could work on in the interim to just figure out what are the platforms, what does the county currently have, what would be the best process forward.
So for instance, with this newsletter, sign up for the newsletter, we can actually start sending that out to our local people in our own district.
Absolutely. You could send it as
organization.
an email. I could write you some text that you could put it as a tagline on your signature. There's lots of ways to get that out. Absolutely.
Okay.
So this is a working QR code on this Appendix A.
Yes, although I haven't tested it since I made it. So if it doesn't work, I will fix it.
And also with the sample letter, is that ready to go out too? That we could send out to our own, like introducing ourselves to our Marin neighbors?
Yeah, I think there's just logistics that would have to be figured out. Like, where would they be printed? Would they be in envelopes? Would they be mailed? How would we get their addresses? There's logistics to letters, paper letters, but that can all be figured out.
Okay.
Is there any more discussion or questions on it?
I was just gonna say one thing, that I don't know that we put in here was the post office, I mean, especially in West Marin, everywhere, that's where everyone gets their mail. But places that you can put a letter up on a bulletin board without having to worry about stamps and mailing it. So if we can do it, I think it's worth doing.
Thank you.
Other comment. So for instance, again, back to the newsletter, we have the list of all these community organizations. This can actually be sent out from your office, this, how to sign up for the newsletter to these organizations that we listed. And if anyone else have other organizations, they can, and send that to you so we can add to this list.
Yeah, for our newsletter, you have to opt in. There's rules about just signing people up for newsletters, although I don't know about you guys, but I get newsletters I didn't sign up for all the time. But our system doesn't allow you to add people without their consent. But we could reach out to them and, let them know that the commission exists and ask if they would put a blurb in their newsletter about the commission. We'd want to make sure we were on board with what that message is. So that would take some vetting and just review. And then asking folks to put it into their newsletter to raise awareness. So those are all options. And then ask those organizations if they'd like to be signed up for the newsletter.
Okay.
Yeah, those are all options.
Thank you. Are there any other comments, questions? Okay, I will close this item out and we will move on to agenda item number 6, consideration of a draft training curriculum. I will invite staff to present their report on this.
All right, thank you, Vice Chair McAvoy. If I could get the slide deck up. Okay, next slide, please. So this item, just like the other one we just went through, is one of our other foundational priorities. And I think it's pretty cool that after tonight, after a little bit more refinement, we'll have a couple of really well done deliverables for the Inspector General to kick off their work here. And we'll have had, all of this time for the commission to really delve into these topics. And I just wanted to acknowledge the work that's been done and that the commission is basically burning right through those phase 1 foundational priorities. So I just wanted to note that. So you can go on to the next slide. So the draft training curriculum that's before you tonight was developed by the ad hoc training curriculum subcommittee. And that was made up of Commissioners McAvoy, Cieslak, Sandoval, and Oldham Rabinet. And next slide, please. The framework for this item Basically, it is it's the responsibility of the commission to establish the training curriculum and to update it as needed and to use subject matter experts. There is also language in the ordinance about collaborating with the commission and the sheriff's office on the training curriculum. And so that is part of the policy framework that this group was working with. Next slide. Again, similar to the last one, I won't go through all of the details, but I just wanted to note that the way that this was, the subcommittee came to get to think about all of the trainings that we had, that we were looking at. It was a very long list. And so it really had to be broken down into smaller digestible parts. And so the subcommittee developed these 3 phases. Phase 1 is orientation and onboarding. And those are topics such as the Brown Act or California Public Records Act. These are things that are just very foundational and need to know before the commissioners really kick off their work. And those would be completed during the first or second month of a commissioner's term. Phase 2 are core oversight foundations. And so these would be an annual overview of the sheriff's office and learning all about peace officer personnel protections. And then the third phase, and then phase 2, those would be completed within the first few months of a commissioner's term. And then phase 3, those are advanced and ongoing trainings and specialized immersive topics. And so those would be structured over a 3-year period and delivered as needed. And that is the longest training topic list that we have in the curriculum. And I like to think of phase 3 as the electives, right? After you've done your core curriculums, then the electives come in. And so this gives the commission a lot of discretion to decide to choose trainings that are really relevant to them in that moment so that they can, if there's an issue around, let's say, jail policies, they can have a training on jail policies or something like those things. So then also in the training curriculum, there's a number of appendices. The commissioners in the subcommittee spoke a lot about not just the trainings and the phasing of it, but who would be providing these, who are the subject matter experts that would be good to provide these types of trainings. There's another appendix with example training events that commissioners could attend. So instead of the commission hosting the training themselves and bringing in a trainer, there's many events that go on locally and nationally and around California. One example is the Truth Act Forum that's happening tomorrow night, where the commissioners could go and receive information and education about those things. So we thought it was interesting to list those. We also thought the commissioners asked, we had a Tina Barr from NACOL. She was our subject matter expert. She's the director of training at NACOL. And she offered the list that's in Appendix C, which are common law enforcement complaint categories. Because that's another way that the commissioners might think about those electives that are in the phase 3, which ones to maybe prioritize, because these are the most common complaints that come up in the Oversight Commission environment. And then the second to last one is the comparative training requirements. So our consultant, Ben Tingle, he looked at a lot of the other training curriculums from other jurisdictions that have oversight bodies. And so I thought it was interesting to compile those all there and links to them so you can review them if you're interested. And then finally, the ordinance text. This, of all the subcommittees, this subcommittee had the longest text in the ordinance to go through. It took us 2 days or 2 meetings just to go through that text. But we wanted to put it all in here so that it's all right here for anyone to look at. And let's go to the next slide. So following the commission discussion and feedback, similar to the community outreach and engagement plan that you reviewed earlier, this will go back to subcommittee after hearing your feedback for further refinements. And then, as I noted at the top, this is one in the ordinance that it is indicated that the Inspector General and the Sheriff's Office will collaborate as well to help finalize the plan. So those will be the next steps. And that's the end of my report. Happy to take questions.
Thank you for that very extensive report. Do any of the commissioners have any questions for staff at this time? I'll start with I'll start going to my left with Commissioner Robin. Commissioner Lee,
No, good, thank you.
Commissioner Gaston,
Yes, in regards to phase 3, when we talk about intermediate and as needed training, and especially the topic of reviewing and understanding data.
Hmm.
So that seems pretty thorough. However, what comes up repeatedly in the Marin City community, and this is from the ministers or local residents, is the question about Marin City being as a training ground for the sheriff's department.
Hmm.
And so how would that be addressed? And then actually to really further go into more discussion about the RIPA report.
Yes, thank you, Commissioner Gaston. I think that the first part of your question about the Marin City being used as a training, I think the annual overview of the sheriff's office that's part of phase 2, that would be an excellent place where commissioners could ask about that, because that was one of the areas that the sheriff's office potentially could go over, is talking about their strategic plan, their organizational structure, their training programs, and any relevant policies. So that would be a place to learn more about that. And then your second question about RIPA data, yeah, RIPA data is included. And we noted that the RIPA data presentation would it would benefit if it was also paired with the review and understanding of data, which is offered by NACOL, because they go through and talk about how to interpret data and how to identify patterns and demographic disparities. And so those things are really relevant to when a commissioner might be learning about RIPA data. And so those are definitely on here, and it's indicated in the plan that they would go well together, like a back-to-back training.
So question back to, if you're recommending that the discussion about the training ground in Marin City would actually go into phase 2, would that include the history, like when it started and just the whole background?
Well, I can't speak to the sheriff's office training program or what they would have as their overview, because we haven't really fleshed that out yet. But we have spoken with them about doing an annual overview where they would go over their policies, programs, procedures, their trainings, and give you a broad, picture of their policies. And so when you ask about this question about their training program, that I think that's a place where they might be able to address that. I can't say for sure because I'm not with the sheriff's office, but I'm just guessing that would be a place that question could come.
And then with the RIPA report, you're in here, you're saying NACO, however, the sheriff's department actually have information on their website about the RIPA report. So I'm trying to get the connection between where? What page? Sorry.
Yes, so yeah, RIPA it's listed last, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, in the phase 3.
Okay.
And that's understanding about RIPA data. And that it's been mentioned a few times to bring in a community organization such as MV Free to conduct that training. I know that they did that in San Rafael at their committee. And so that would definitely be an option if you wish to pursue it.
I would think that we should include local Marin City community organizations and churches, because even though Mill Valley but the organizations and the people who are directly related to this in Marin City should be included.
Noted. Thank you.
Are there any other, Commissioner Saul?
No question.
Commissioner Chan?
No, thank you.
All right, if there's no other questions, I will open this up to the public for public comment. And again, public comments will be at 2 minutes. Is there anybody from the audience that would like to speak on this item?
Um, notion of history. There's history in a PRA, Public Request Act, that I'll speak to 6 of you, and 3 that's missing. I've asked, but obviously it's not happening. But I'll ask the 6 of you as a whole. As you mentioned, history. There's a Public Request Act that was asked of a community member by the DA's office. It's an official document from the Marin DA's office. All you have to do is email them. They'll give it to you. And this goes back from about 1990, 1989, 90 through 2020. And you will get lots of the history that was posed here. Now, I've been saying this for about 5-6 months now. All it takes is an email. So someone who's willing to do this would be greatly appreciated to bring this document for your records. So you'll have it. You can add as an attachment. You have RIPA. You can have the official document from the DA's office. And there's plenty of history right there. So I'll humbly ask someone. We have a representative from Marin City, but I can only speculate that she's unwilling to get it. I'll ask someone else who's willing to get this document. Again, I'm going to repeat, from the DA's office, an official document with plenty of history. Thank you. It'll show you all the discrepancies in detail.
Thank you for your comment.
Hi, I just want to bring up I think it was Commissioner Gaston that was talking about training at Marin City. And I'm not sure if I read this right, but based on what she was saying and reports I've heard, there has been over policing, there has been over a lot of training done in Marin City. So maybe when there's training to be done with you all, maybe train somewhere else besides Marin City. Thanks.
Thank you for your comment. Is there anybody else from the audience that would like to provide comments? Is there anybody in Zoom?
We have 3 speakers on Zoom. First speaker is going to be iPhone SE. Please unmute.
Thank you. I'm not sure why it was so hard for Mr. Saris to get those words out about Marin City. Mr. Saris has been aware of the data that I pulled for arrest referred to prosecution 1989 through 2020. It's a 32-year period. I started pulling that in 2020. I had the full set of data in 2021. By early 2021, that was provided to Mr. Saris, that was provided to Felicia Gaston. I presented it at the Human Rights Commission, and there was a concerted effort within the county from commissioners, other appointed people to push back on that information. And in fact, I was broadly mocked by local media, 2 local media outlets that both have contracts with the county, the Marin Independent Journal, as well as the Pacific Sun, because people don't want that information to get out. There is no excuse for Felicia Gaston, who herself has a close relationship with Sheriff Scardina, to continue to waffle on where is this data. She's had it this entire time. The DA has had it prepared for this entire time since 2021. It has, in fact, been up on their website. So it's not clear to me. And by the way, my name is Ava Crisanti. I've been writing about this for years at marincountyconfidential.substack.com. I would like to know why that isn't on your agenda. Can someone please explain that? That is a historical record that should have been top of the agenda because it's much richer data than the RIPA data. The RIPA data is very limited in what it looks like. And one of the reasons the 32-year record, which is as much as I could get, and I have it for every law enforcement agency in the entire county, including the sheriff, including Mill Valley Police, including Sausalito Police, the 3 law enforcement agencies that surround and, quote unquote, hug Marin City.
Thank you. Comment.
We have Stephen Bingham next. Please unmute.
Good evening, members of the committee. I tuned in late, apologize, but I did want to comment also on Ms. Gaston's comments, independent of the presentation of the sheriff's training and what they do. The whole issue of using Marin City as a training ground, it seems to me it's an independent issue that needs to be looked at separately and urgently. Listening to Lynn talk, it sounded sort of bureaucratic that at some point down the line we'll get to this and don't worry about it. But this use of local people in the Marin City area to train cadet police officers is just historically beyond outrageous. And I would urge the committee, and you have the power to do this, to ask that the county agendize that specific issue, independent of talking about RIPA data and all the rest of it. But the issue of using citizens or residents in Marin City as sort of, just people to exercise. How do you arrest someone, get out of the car, put your hands on the car? I think that's worth a full discussion in and of itself. And I do think now that you're fully in place, that I would recommend to the committee that you ask the county to agendize that urgently for a full standalone discussion. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your comment. We have one more.
Yes, we do have one more constituent. Please go ahead and unmute.
Hi there. As a constituent here in Marin County, one of my biggest concerns with this committee is how funds are being spent and getting an understanding of where the funds are coming from and where they're going. Earlier, you mentioned something regarding a consultant. I believe you said his name was Ben. Is the county able to, or this commission, I guess, able to tell us where that money is exactly coming from and how much was spent on that consultant? I'm very concerned with where this money, how the commission is going to be using it, being transparent about where the money is coming from. So if the county or this commission could please advise what was spent, where the money came from, and if they can't do it right now, is it possible to get this added for the next meeting? That would be super helpful in helping many understand where all this money that is supporting this is coming from. Thank you.
For comment. Are there any other members of the audience who would like to comment?
None on Zoom.
None on Zoom? Okay, I will close public comment on this item and move to the commission discussion on this item.
Well,
Go ahead, Commissioner
yeah,
Gaston.
I definitely have a comment. And I know Lynn, maybe you could advise me this, we're not to comment on public comments to us, or I just need to say something for the record.
Yes, that's fine, briefly.
Okay, for the record, I have not received any data. I want to make that very clear because that's public. Because other than that, I would not be bringing it up. So that's for sure. I have not received any data because if I did, then I would have brought it to this commission. I do know that there is some RIPA report on the sheriff's website, but again, for the record, do not have any data at all.
commissioners that have any comments? No other comments? So then there's no action for this item, and I will close out this agenda item and move on to agenda item number 7, which is to adjourn the meeting. Do I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
Second.
I have Commissioner Robinette to with the motion to adjourn and Commissioner Gaston with the second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? The meeting is adjourned. Thank you all for coming and have a good night.
Thank you.